So what is the future of work in your ideal world? How are you thinking about defining it? And
Optionality, baby. There's we had someone on who she wrote the portfolio life. If you're familiar with the term,
yes, that's what I call my
portfolio career, the
Portfolio
life,
approach,
which
yeah.
is it's like you have a pie and you fill it how you want, and that is what I think is the future. And I'm maybe it's wishful thinking, but so what? That's what I'm gunning for. I'm going for a portfolio life where I can have my creativity, I can have my projects that are meaningful, I can have my up and to the right, let's get this business done, and I can also pick up the kids.
Yeah. Right. And maybe it goes in phases. Maybe like a couple of years you're in portfolio world.
That's
and then
right.
maybe you're like, I'm in this 9 to 5 type of environment, because not everybody, certain careers, certain jobs, but at least having, sorry, I'm using your words, optionality.
Don't be sorry. That's the whole point of it being the name of her company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It makes such a difference. I would love to see this vision come to life for sure.
We want to normalize it.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the HumanizeHer Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lockheimer.
And I'm your co-host, Elizabeth.
Today, we are speaking with Jory Des Jardins. Now, what makes us super excited to speak with her is she is the founder of BlogHer. BlogHer was a blog that reached over 100 million users across all social platforms. It was so revolutionary during its time. But most recently, she is now the co-founder of Optionality. Optionality focuses on fractional roles, and she's on a mission to redefine work. Let's get into it. Welcome, Jory Des Jardins. Did I get it right?
You did.
Oh, we were practicing.
I know. We were practicing.
Thank you so much for being on this show with us. It's amazing also. I think we should just talk about how this moment came to be. It's the power of just connecting online or in a moment. So we were at South by Southwest.
I was stalking you. Yes.
You were? I didn't know
were
that. You just told me that right now?
No. I mean,
okay.
But you were speaking on a panel, and I thought it was fantastic. It was one of my favorite panels from that South by. And I think I went up to you. I'm trying to remember if we met. We did meet in person.
Yes.
And we connected.
You followed up on a LinkedIn message.
Yes, that's right.
And you said, you said, I really enjoyed the conversation. And I was like,
brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was what, 2022?
2022.
You were there with me when we went. Yeah.
Yep. And I loved your approach. I was like, wow, people who are humans at work. Love it.
Isn't it great to see? Humanize it.
For sure. And then I think about when we were all the guests, and I ran across, we're going to go through your whole amazing career journey, but just going through it, and I was like, I'm going to just cold call her and see if she's interested in being on the show and talking and giving us some advice, and because we're in some similar stages of maybe where you were at some parts of your career, and you immediately said yes. It's pretty cool. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's like way to support.
I mean, any business with her at the end, I'm in. I want to meet with you. But no, honestly, I figured this was something I would want to be a part of.
Yeah. The synergies are there for sure.
It totally is. So let's talk about your current focus.
Yeah.
Your company that you started and what stage you're in. It's called Optionality.
Oh,
what is it?
So Optionality at this point is a passion project. We don't really have a business model. We just have a passion and a community of people who are engaging, and we're kind of feeling it out.
Sounds so familiar.
Very familiar. Thanks.
Exactly what we're doing.
I love that you have no business plan, because that makes me feel like a sense of belonging. Thank you.
But it goes back to, because my co-founder at Optionality was one of my co-founders from BlogHer, we know this journey, and we took a very similar journey with BlogHer, which was sort of like, let's get some folks together and see what happens. And then the magic happened, and people kind of told us what they wanted, and we built a business around that. Will that happen this time? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think we want to get venture capital this time. We want to grow the community organically. We want to see where it goes and then take it from there. Wow. But when you add venture capital to a community setting, it can be magical, but it can also grow and make it inorganic. So we are very cautious about that.
So
That's good to
intentional.
know.
Yes,
Yeah.
more intentional.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And we're focused on the future of work. So the idea here is that when my partner and I got together, which we do all the time, we were complaining about various things that we had encountered in our post-startup life after we had been acquired and we were with the company for a few years. We left and we pursued many different things. For me, it was kind of like a grab bag of different things that I wanted to try. Same thing with Elisa. And we would always come back together and say, like, how are you doing? And there are certain themes that we saw. And in particular, we noticed two things. One was with many startups that would bring us in as advisors or want to bring us in like, hey, we want to kind of create the BlogHer of. And we were like, well, you kind of need to do your thing, but we're glad to help you with the steps to get there. And we noticed that there was one, particularly with startups, a desire to bring in senior talent, but they weren't ready for it. And it struck me as a little wasteful because I would have to lay people off or we would have to say, hey, great, let's part ways. And no one was happy with that. And Elisa had been through something like that. And we were kind of going over, wow, what if we could actually rent ourselves out and not make this our full-time gig and actually let people have our share of our expertise, kind of like an advisor, except a little more integrated, which was a fractional arrangement.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
because that's what's
Yes.
unique on her LinkedIn resume. Is she has
Yes.
so many fractional
That's right.
roles. I'm like,
Yeah.
what is a fractional role at that many different companies?
I honestly thought it meant because you hold that position at so many places at the same time that was the fractional. But it's really like the amount of time that you're spending.
About the
Tell us what it is.
Yeah.
And unlike an advisory where you're talking to companies and you're talking to many companies, fractionals, you really want to keep it down to one or two because you're really in there as an operator. So you have a team to manage, you've got a P&L, you're running part of the business at the end of the day. And that's not something you want to duck in, duck out.
Right.
You really do have a little more skin in the game. And we both wanted to propagate this as a business model. We did it at BlogHer. Our CRO had come to us fractionally. We just didn't have a name for it at the time. We just said, hey, tell you what, we're going to borrow you for a little while because she had another business she was trying to build at the same time. Worked out beautifully. She ended up coming on full time, but she had the option of working with us. We had the option of working with her and her brain for a good 2-3 years before she could join us full time. And then as we started to riff on this, I'm like, options. It's about options. And how do you create options? Because right now, after you leave a company or after you've had this glorious 30-year career, what are the options?
Yeah.
People think, oh, it's retirement. It's, I'm going to go volunteer.
Right.
All great. But what if you want to do a little bit of, I'm working on a book. I want to advise companies. I want to maybe run and operate, but not the full way I was before. Oh, and I'm a caregiver. There's so much more that both she and I wanted to do. And similar to BlogHer, where we realized there were people who were independent publishers and were creating lives and businesses doing it, there was no playbook. So how did we work? Well, we created the playbook, helped to create the playbook for bloggers. We worked with the FTC around best practices and standards for creators, which you just got to do now. You now disclose if you're a creator and you were given a product, you have to disclose that. That wasn't the case 20 years ago when we started BlogHer. 20, goodness, not quite 20, but almost 20 years ago.
And so for our listeners, like, can you explain what BlogHer is? And I want to go back to the fractional stuff because I have a lot of questions on it. But just so
it's
people have the
important to
context.
know the model though, because the model we took and we moved and we thought about it for optionality as a model for how to grow the business. BlogHer is a collection of creators. Now it's part of a media company, a larger media company. But at the time that we built it, it was really a way for us to show up in the media as a media entity. If you remember back in 2005, creators were bloggers at the time. There weren't even Facebookers and Instagrammers and all of that. So at the time, if you wanted to create or have a career as a blogger, good luck with that. Who was going to pay for advertising on your site? Who was going to see your site? There were maybe 5 sites that people knew about. So we created a bigger footprint by basically creating a way for these publishers to come into an entity. Wow. And we were able to kind of slice and dice and say, here's the food bloggers, here are the parenting bloggers, and create a much larger footprint so they had representation.
And you got to 100 million?
100 million monthly across the creators.
100 million monthly blogs? Is that
no.
or bloggers?
No.
No, but
users.
yes, users.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Users. And the BlogHer, was it mostly women that were the bloggers?
It was, although there were men who had largely female readerships, and they were, honorary
I love that.
members.
Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. That is
Allies.
And everyone was invited to the conference. People used to think that men weren't allowed, which was not the case at all.
Yeah.
We loved having guys at
Yeah.
BlogHer.
That's what you run into with women's organizations. Like when we were at LinkedIn and Erica created Women in Tech, a lot of the male allies weren't sure if they should even show up or be part of the events. And she's like getting approached with, how can I help support you if it's a women's event? She's like, no, I want you to show up and I want you to just listen,
Yeah. And I think that's a whole... even the space of what we're doing too. It's like you need allies. The whole population, and yes, 50% are women, and I think we need to have a major focus there, which is why we have HumanizeHer. It's intentional, but you need allies, and you need to get it done in order to do this kind of impact that you want. It's just also a fact of who's in certain roles now and all that stuff in order to make that type of impact. It's just you're dealing with reality. Also.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to optionality. So you're saying this framework of what you saw worked for BlogHer.
Yes.
And now you're like, we need to make a company out of it in a more intentional way of having these fractional roles, similar to how you had people that were writing and in journalism and everything on BlogHer. That's what you're believing in, optionality. I'm trying to understand exactly
how.
So
we're community builders at the end of the day, right?
Okay.
I think we all share that.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what it was going to look like. Much like at BlogHer, we didn't. What happened was the creators told us, hey, we're sick of these people coming to me asking to run their press releases on my blog. I want to have representation. I want to choose my ads. I want to talk about what I want to talk about and still work with brands. So we created the rules of engagement for those creators. Similarly, there's a demand, and I'll give you examples of people who are in our community. One has exited her company. She had exited her 3rd company. 2 of them she helped to take public. And she's like, I'm not doing it the same way. I'm kind of over that, but I'm not done working. Yeah. So I want to figure out what's my next thing, but I want to figure it out my way. And I kind of want to coach, but I'm not sure. And trying to figure out how to build out a practice.
Yep.
And what exactly do I want that practice to look like? Perfect. This is the conversation we're having all day long.
Yeah.
Other people were laid off, right? Tech, we know this. We know it happens. And they're late in their careers. They're like, kind of over it. And I want to continue to do what I do, but I want to do it in my terms. And I have a lot of experience that I'm bringing to the table. How can I start advising fractional executive work? All kinds of things. I've seen one of our communities, she is building a nonprofit. That was her dream. I wanted to create something that really spoke to my sense of purpose.
So it sounds like it's across all different segments. It doesn't matter. It can be anything.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there tends to be, in our particular community, more experienced people who have been in the workforce for some time, just because they're not building skills. They're kind of looking, they are building skills. They're building skills on how to figure out how to do something with their prodigious former careers.
In a new way that still fuels their passion and gets them excited to wake up and go to work every day.
Yeah. But they have the experience to apply it, and they still want to work. We all are passionate about still working. And just because you decided not to work in the traditional ways that we have for a really long time, but trying a new way to define what success looks like for us. I think that's really great.
Oh, I think we are.
Yeah.
On the same
it's true, because we have so many more years in us, but what are we going to do with all this wisdom and this talent and everything that you gained. And so I'm really excited to see how optionality is going to move forward. So it sounds like even in your career, you've done an optionality.
I'm like a walking option. I don't know. I
like that right here. Yeah, because it's amazing what your impact in your career journey is. It's very untraditional.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. So I graduated from college early because I wanted to write the great American novel. By the way, I was not a fiction writer. I was a journalist. I had that kind of a background. And I knew that New York at the time was the place to be for publishing, right? And I had an internship at a publishing house, and I just couch surfed until I found a job.
You literally couch surfed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I did.
Good. With people you knew?
God.
Okay, those seem like some like stories. We got a couch for you, Jory, just so you know.
There were many like aunts and sisters and friends of, and they were out of town. And would I watch the cat while like a lot of arrangements like that? I did paint someone's basement and got to stay there for a while in the process.
So you know, an artist or just painting?
Oh no, just like painting, like
not a mural.
Not a mural.
You didn't want me doing that.
We're doing eggshell. Color.
I made it work. Put it that way. I made it work.
How do you even have that negotiation? Like, hey, can I sleep here in your basement and I'll paint it? Like, is that their idea? Your idea?
It was one of my best friends in high school. Her parents they knew me, and they were like, hey, we have an arrangement. And of course, you know, they're just trying to help me out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I felt like I did something for that couch.
But that's what's important about having the people that know you and support you.
It was a network. It was a network. And I did have a network, but it was very random, I'll be honest. And I was there, and I had like this idea, this notion that through osmosis, not optionality, osmosis, I would get to publish my novel by working around people who did that kind of thing. So I got my first job in book publishing at Penguin USA.
Penguin's a big company.
Big. And I read a lot. There? I read manuscripts. Okay. Literally I carried, and this was before they were digital. So I had to have like huge manuscripts on my back. I had a backpack because they were so heavy, and I walked around and read in coffee shops.
Did you
constantly
provide feedback, or you would be the reader of the manuscript to pass on to?
I was the first. I was the gate.
You were the first,
the gatekeeper.
But to veto. So how many did you veto then?
Oh, I don't even.
Those poor writers.
Count. Well, but
I thought you said DeVito, like Danny DeVito. I was all,
yeah. And if you were already kind of famous, you already had an in. I got to read what you call the slush pile.
Oh,
right. So if you weren't known, generally you had to have an agent, but if you didn't, it was unsolicited and it was in the slush pile, and I could just go through those pretty quick.
Yeah.
Wow. I could read a page and no.
That's not going to work out.
And what type of things? Were they all different types of publishing? Like, is there a style or a segment? Is there any difference?
My boss was known as the queen of grime, crime, and slime. She was into crime novels. She was into cat novels. Like, literally, she had a thing for cat novels. Yes.
I didn't even know that's a thing.
Cat mysteries.
Cat mysteries.
Like literally felines.
Yes, that involved cats.
I've never even seen a movie about cats.
What mysteries can you have?
It's a thing.
It's a thing?
Some of these authors were, had fan bases like you wouldn't believe, and the true crime fan bases, and she loved romance.
Oh.
Yes.
Crime, cat, and romance. Yeah. I love it.
What about like R.L. Stein? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Was that kind of the wheelhouse or no?
Is that slush?
The slime is coming out for me.
Slush. That would have been very but we also published Stephen King.
Oh.
Okay.
So, I loved it because I had books everywhere. I can just for free because they're expensive.
Love to read.
Yeah. And I love to read.
Right. Wow, that is so amazing. Okay, so then if you're going through all these, and you said, slush pile, a lot of no's, a lot of no's.
Yeah.
What about, did you discover any amazing authors when you were going through some of them? Now you look back. Oh, I read that one.
I did not discover an author, but there was one that really affected me. And this is why, so this is when I realized I needed to get a job, like I couldn't write the American novel right out of the gate. There was a writer named Nancy Taylor Rosenberg, and she was a former cop in Texas, I believe. And she was also a great writer, and she wrote these novels, and she became like one of the biggest best-selling it wasn't a true crime, but she did her own crime novels, and she had a whole series, and she became very wealthy. And I remember thinking like, well, she had all this experience behind her doing her job. She was able to bring her job as a detective into the novels.
That
and
mindset,
I thought, I might actually need to know something and do something before I can write the great American
Don't tell
novel.
me you became a cop.
No, I did not. But it did make me realize that, sure, there are some preternaturally talented people who could just write a novel and we're great, we're good, Nobel, we're out the door. For me, I need to riff off of something, and I needed to riff off of life, and I had no life experience. There was nothing for me to write about.
Because you're how old at this time that you had
21. I actually,
Yeah,
you're
it makes sense.
baby.
You're just learning and living and starting.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, next plan.
Oh, so literally, that's when you decided.
I'm going to have to like build up a career, and then let's see if I can write something after I have a career. That was the plan.
Is this where you talked about, because you had a blog, I believe it's called Is Passion a Dirty Word? Is that what this is?
Passion a dirty
change?
word. That was when things changed for me. And of course, my boyfriend at the time was an artist, and he lived with other people in in a studio, and they all like had their art. And I was like, wow, I felt like there was this bridge. Which side do I want to be on? Right? Because it was a choice. It was such a stark, dramatic shift. Yeah. But I realized as I got older and as I started to move along in my career, I could actually bridge the gap by finding things that were worthy of art, of writing about. And that's when I started to pursue entrepreneurism. BlogHer is basically a business for writers. At the end of the day, I get to be with my people.
Yeah. When did you start BlogHer after that phase of pivot?
So I first there was the .com bust.
Welcome. I was there too.
Yes. Where you doing?
Oh yeah. Oh, I just watched everything go down.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
The bubble burst.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I moved out to San Francisco because I met up with a team in media. They were a former team from CNN, and I was in media at the time, and they recruited me in New York, but to move out to San Francisco. And I'm like, well, let's try this thing, this startup thing. And it ended up kind of putting me on this totally different career trajectory. So it was a media startup for baby boomers, of which I was not. But I was working as an editor, and I had writers, and I was building that out. And then when the startup died, I realized, that was kind of fun. The part where it died was not fun.
Yeah, of course.
But I really learned about meritocracy. I killed it there. And when you're in New York in publishing, my first job was editorial assistant. A year later, it's assistant editor. A year later, it's associate editor. A year later, it's editor. Yep. A year later, it's like associate publisher, editor. I'm exaggerating, but it was like this very linear political situation. And being in a startup, it's like, wow,
you can carve your
you're
own
pretty
path,
good at that.
kind
Do
of.
you want to be the head of biz dev? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Yeah. Whatever that
Guess
means.
what?
That's
I'm
amazing.
it now.
I'm gonna figure it out.
And that was how I built my career in startups. And then I really didn't want to look back after that.
Wow. So you never got into the corporate, there was nothing that was drawing you to that at all. You're like, I guess, why did you stay away from it? Because it's such a different story. Some people are like, oh, I went into corporate, then I went back into my passion work. But you just, you stayed your path.
Well, I was an editor at Time Warner. So that was a big one. That's a big company. And I was at the New York Times. Those were big ones. But I didn't stay long.
Wow.
Because they felt to me like getting my card punched. And I was like, all right, did it. Now, onward.
Yeah.
And then I started BlogHer. It was another transition. And the economy was shifting. People were getting jobs again. And I'm like, okay, do I want to work at a company or do I want to start my own? And it just so happens I was at a conference. I got very into blogging because it was a way to write, but I could still have a job.
Yeah.
And I was at a conference and I met Elisa. She was sitting
that's how
across
you
from
met her.
me
Okay.
at a table. And the thing that really was noteworthy is that we were the only two writing our notes. Everyone else, I mean, this was 2005. So
Okay.
people were typing their notes, not yet, like recording or putting up their phone. And we were the only two writing them. And I was like, oh, hey. And we just got to talking. And then we realized that we both had a passion for blogging. And then she told me about another person that she had just met named Lisa Stone, who our third
the
founder,
author of the book that you said was like the closest one that, oh gosh, wow.
And so that was when we're like, we should have an event. Let's do an event for bloggers, right? And that was just the beginning of it. We had an event and we must have done the right thing at the right time because people came from all over the country to show up.
Wow.
And we only had a room for 300. We didn't have, it wasn't a big thing. We did it in Santa Clara. We had sort of like here, we're going to have dinner beforehand. Just give us a 20 at the door. And, there's welcome. And there's some sangria on the table. Have fun. And CNN showed up and all of these media outlets because they're bloggers. So they all talk. And someone talked to someone and people showed up and we had, who became some of the biggest bloggers in the world came to that first event. And then we were on the map. And they all were like, well, now what?
Yeah.
What now? We're all here. We all had a great time. And we realized,
There's a need.
Yeah, maybe we should figure this out.
Yeah.
Continue to serve this community that we all were members of.
Wow. And what did that business model look like? How did you make it into a successful business? Because we've talked about having so many passions, but how do you actually make money at the end of the day for something like this?
Well, first thing, and I think what was critical to us growing the company was trust. Bloggers are the most persnickety people on the planet because we're very critical and we want to, I think integrity was a big thing. And we never asked them to do something they didn't want to do. We just said, hey, do you want ads? Yeah, but only if. And we stuck to their preferences. We always asked, we always said, what do you want? What don't you want? And we always made it clear with the advertisers that we talked to. Here's what we'll do. Here's what we won't. And if we don't think it's going to work, we're going to tell you. We're not going to let it blow up. We're not going to make anyone look bad, but we also have to honor this community. And we always had that back and forth. That was always part of the deal. It was kind of baked into our agreement with all of the bloggers. And once we had this kind of critical mass, then brands came to us. We really didn't have to do too much to get, they also wanted education. How do we reach these people? How do we work with these people? So we were able to bridge that and provide education and insights into this group that people were increasingly realizing were very valuable.
Wow. So then was it a paid membership model? Like I want to how does it work?
The beauty of BlogHer is that you didn't have to pay to be a member. If you wanted to monetize your blog, you could apply to be part of the advertising network and we would vet your blog, make sure that you were who you said you were. If you said at the time, there were brands who wouldn't want to be on a site that was, that used the F word and whatever. So we had to make sure that you were following your own, guidelines if you were going to have the ads. And we ran ads. And the thing about the ads, though, is that there were rules and certain brands, we were like, sorry, we know you want to be on the biggest blogger site, but she's a scratch cook and she won't take processed food ads. Sorry. So we were very respectful and that was trust at the end of the day.
That is so great. And that's actually very forward thinking because I feel, even during the .com days, it's just ads everywhere. That's how most of the product, but I don't know if there was any conscious, deciding you want to have your product show up with this ad. That's very forward thinking. That's not, that's, you didn't hear that back then. It was just more of get the money, get the ad, make the money and go.
Right. Well, and I think that a common model for media is, it's what the brand advertiser wants because they're paying the bills. And for us, it's what does the blogger want? And then we would tell the brand, here are the rules. Yes or no.
Because it's their content at the end of the day. And what do they want associated with that?
You're going to see something that you don't even align with in your values on that blog and right next to an ad to that. Yeah, that's amazing. That's great work.
And that was the key. And once you have the trust, and then we also had the hub and spoke, right? So, we connected with this blogger who has huge connections with the LGBTQ blogging crowd. And then they would bring in their, so these like sub communities all felt represented, but we made sure that we kept in like the ringleaders, everywhere there are these like sub communities and they all have leaders.
Yeah.
And we were very respectful of that process. We never said, this is what they want. We asked them.
And you got to 100 million members on the site, actually viewing on your blog. Was it a gradual growth or did you get like a spike? I mean, because I always remember, I used to run the growth team at LinkedIn for many years. And I remember those spikes on the graph and it's like, we did this and this happened, or can you talk about your growth of how that even happened?
So we started with 35 mom blogs because we knew that there was some heat in that area. We knew brands were interested and we had a bunch of mom bloggers who were like, hey, I don't like the ads and the options that I have available. So let's do this. And they were willing to work with us. And then we sort of said, all right, this is working well. Who else wants in? And then we had 1,000. And we realized we needed to raise capital because we couldn't accommodate. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the ability to scale and to onboard so quickly. So after the venture capital, we really just had this ongoing kind of door to get in. And then we figured out how to make that an operation and process people quicker and get them in. And then we had a team who just made sure that you were who you said you were and that you were following the rules.
Identity verification and
totally.
Which is great.
And then we kind of built it from there. And then I think as we started to get comfortable with the business model, we'd realize, oh, wow, fashion blogging, we need a little more there. And we could start to see where the waves were in interest. And then we could kind of bring in more in a category.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So then BlogHer is still going strong today, but it was acquired by She Media.
She Media.
So how did that transition happen? And when you say like, I'm ready, I'm going to be, it's successful, you're doing well, you're living your dream. Like, how do you just decide we're going to take a different course? You're going to be on a different course.
And
what
did
happened?
you work under She Media for a while?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Bored out of my mind. It's really hard when you're kind of in building mode and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we're good. You hang out, which everyone was very respectful and lovely, but I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah. And that's what sometimes happens. I've done some acquisitions in companies and it's like you bring in the founders and it's like, are they going to thrive or not in this new environment? And I've seen it go both ways.
Yes.
And like bored out of their mind. Exactly. It's like, it doesn't fit anymore. I need to go back. So what role and how long did you last? And then you're like, like literally where?
And part of it was really not their fault. There was a shift in media and it really bugged me. And in many ways, it was my fault because at BlogHer, people could get premium advertising. We're very respectful, but this thing called programmatic advertising started to take over and it's much more automated. It's much more based on the audience data, like, oh, we're going to send these ads to this person because she's a mother with 3 kids living in Tulsa versus I'm the blogger and I want this ad. So there was a shift in the way it was working. And also there was a lot of many of these sites were putting on just so many ads, it was just all gunked up and we didn't like it. We didn't want to do it that way, but the tides were shifting and we knew that we were going to have a reckoning with this kind of growing programmatic, which actually is now, I think, taking a step back, especially since cookies were sunsetted.
Yeah, you have to accept, reject, and it's a totally different world.
That's it. But it had to get bad before it got good.
Yeah, it was out of control.
Yeah, it was out of control.
And creepy at times.
Yes. And so I was I had been head of BD and president. So I was building out the business on the digital side. And I think the opportunities were like, oh, gee, more of that. Do you want to do more and figure out like how to add more of that to the network? And it didn't feel right. Everyone was really like, hey, you're just doing what you got to do. and this is where the business is going. And I think bloggers appreciated that we kept them current, but at the same time, they weren't, I don't think, that happy with all of this stuff that they had to deal with and their data. And we're going to sell that too now. And it was just starting to become more than I think we wanted.
Not as
to be
that
there
premier service that they were used to with you. Like the individual touch points with them, making sure you're catering to what they're asking for, what they want. It became what the business needed to make more money.
The pendulum swung way too much to the right.
That's right.
Like it didn't service the needs anymore. Yeah. And so that's when you're like, I'm done.
Yeah. And that was when I was leading some new business initiatives, and I thought, I really want to explore the next thing in publishing, the next thing in media. And I wasn't sure what that was. So I thought, I'm going to go figure it out, and I'm going to take the time and just explore. And that's when I went into my emerging tech phase and developed a very large crush on VR, AR, MR, blockchain, and just played. Yeah. Advisory roles, hung out. I had a show in VR. That was really fun.
You did?
A
What
show?
was the
What do
show?
you mean?
Yeah, can you give us
there were
tell
a
us
bunch
more?
of startups that were trying to explore VR. And, VR kind of went wah-wah.
Yeah, it's like
Right?
here we're in a conference and we're all on VR. and
Everyone's excited. And
I
then they're
tried to get
not.
excited about it, but I'm like, this is kind of weird.
Well,
felt
and you wanted to
weird.
throw up because the tech wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would get sick in the show.
Vertigo. Yeah.
oh, like literally throw
Yeah.
up.
No,
I was
I would
like,
get-
this is horrible.
yes.
I'm gonna throw up.
No, I'm being literal. And so I teamed up with a company at the time, Alt VR. I think they were bought by Microsoft, I want to say. Altspace. Sorry, Altspace. And they were experimenting, and I was like, hey, I'm down. So I did a show where and they had regulars who would kind of show up, except they would show up as like as a avatar. And so I had like avatars. Some folks were like an exclamation mark off in the corner.
What were you?
I was very literal. I was like just a cartoon version of myself.
Okay.
I mean, I looked a little Lego-like. I did.
Were you a
it was
blogger
new.
in this VR world? Like, what was your role?
No,
What did you do?
I'm Jory. Here's my show. And I would have guests on the show,
Okay.
and they would come in, and they could come in from anywhere, which was kind of cool. I could interview someone in another country. And sometimes they would come in as like, one of them looked like a slinky.
Interesting. You're in conversation with a slinky.
The slinky.
How do you keep your...
I'm sorry. I got a visual. You already got me in the VR world, and then you add a
And
slinky.
if you
Like,
think
I
about,
don't know what's
Meta
going
when
on
they
here.
did their thing. It's like,
How do you keep your
like,
Lego
no
face
one has-
straight? Like,
but that's just it, right? Like I think VR was still like TBD, what
Right.
it's going to be like and what the norms are going to be. And at the time, the norms were some people came in like slinkies, and some people came in looking like people, but cartoons and
Right. Yeah. Anything went.
yeah,
Because it's a whole different reality. So let's. Wow. Oh,
I was just playing around.
So you have such an interesting background. Emerging tech. You're like, I'm gonna try this.
Where's the thread here?
Where's
I don't
the
know.
thread here? No, but also I also have a feeling like, or a question. I have a question for you, which is, how do you get that confidence? Because we've been in so many discussions recently in a with all our podcast guests, and there's just always this definition of what we think we should be or who we should be and where we're at, and you're defying all of that.
Yeah.
And you're just going after, like, I'm bored. I'm going to do here. I'm going to be in this VR world and do this and that. Where does that courage come from to do that and not care and not give a damn and just do it? I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you. I can't say it's always worked out, right?
Yeah, let's hear about the bad stuff.
But I will say that having done something and failed miserably, it also, I mean, you've developed the muscle, right? You've developed it. And I'm like, if that's the worst it can be,
right.
I survived.
You can bounce back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I survived. And when you also have seen it pay off, BlogHer paid off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I
huge
was like,
success.
but now, and I think for me, there was a feeling, like I had a gut feeling that, I mean, it was crazy what we were doing. I mean, we didn't fund ourselves for 18 months. We were like, and at one point we decided, well, we're not going to do anything else. We're just going to work on this. So we quit all the other stuff we were doing. And I remember my husband, who I wasn't married yet, but we were I was engaged, and he was like, "You sure that this is what you want to be doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know why. I just know. I just know this is what I want to do." And that's what I follow. That
It
is
just
the
feels
gut.
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring this up. We were just talking to someone. Everyone should listen to Amy Wong as well. But she talks about a path of either figuring it out or feeling it out.
Yeah.
And you just described exactly what.
that.
I mean, all of us, because we just were talking. We just all got goosebumps when you said that, because you did that and you just went with your feeling and you went for it, and it's been successful. So so far it's amazing.
Well, and I was young. I mean,
Yeah.
it's different. It's different when you're older, because sometimes you catch yourself. You're like, oh, I don't want to be seen trying again, and that is something that I've had to constantly get over and do again. I remember when I had my blockchain phase, and I still am into it. I still enjoy it.
What does that mean when you're in your blockchain phase?
Meaning that I worked at Consensus, if you're not familiar, is one of the largest, was one of the largest venture studios. And the founder of the company is the co-founder of Ethereum. And he just had this like crazy fund that he had built because, of course, Ethereum took off. And he just said, well, let's get everyone on the Ethereum blockchain, and built a holocratic organization. It was a flat org. But there were people who had been executives for 30 years. And there are literally, and I say this like with love, kids out of college who were all in the same room and all had to figure this out. And that to me was very humbling, because I was learning, right? I was there for my experience and as an operator, and we know, community. I was head of the community, and had to build this thing. But at the same time, I'm like, but you all know so much more about this than I do. So just having to be willing to do that on an ongoing basis has been sort of the last 10 years of my career.
Wow.
And enjoyable because you're learning.
Oh, I have stories. I have, for the most part, for the most part. But it really took, I mean, I don't want to like do the eye roll, oh, millennials, because at the time, I can't believe millennials. Now I'm like, we're so similar. But but it was the Gen Zs and some of the newer, like such a different way of working. And I realized they're helping me figure this out. The way they work is so different than the way I work. And some of it was a little eye rolly, but at the same time, I had to get used to doing this, because it really is the future. Like I was like the old person in the room, and I had to just admit it.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about you're making all these choices. That BlogHer was successful, and you had an acquisition, but there's moments, like you said, couch surfing. How do you balance it out where you were paying the bills, going after your passion, where there's some challenges in the road where it's like you wanted to again go on that path of following your passion, but it's like you also had reality hit you of how are you going to survive? How are you going to pay the bills? How are you going to, because it sounds so good to be true sometimes. And so there must be some challenges along the way of where sometimes you were able to and sometimes you weren't.
I think that part of the challenge, and I can't say I've been successful every time, because, so a good example, before I started BlogHer, I was writing, I had a book deal. Like I wanted a book deal, got a book deal, and realized that if I'm going to actually fulfill this, and you don't, unless you're Stephen King or someone who's been writing, like you don't get the big contract. This isn't going to put food on the table. Right. And I realized, well, I can write the book or I can continue to build BlogHer. And I decided, well, I'm going to build BlogHer because I can't do just this. And I had to kind of weigh these things. But I always figured out ways where I was a columnist. I could still write. I could still, but I did it differently. So how can you pull threads of the things that you are passionate about? Same thing with optionality, right? I'm a fractional executive. I'm still working with companies. I'm still doing that the operating work, but I get to go have fun with Elisa. We get to go do podcasts and interview people that we think are really cool. Yeah. And we get to go and we get to write and we get to have our meetups and meet with our community and have a great time. So you make it work.
I have a question about the partnership piece. Like you said that you founded BlogHer with Elisa and also another woman,
Lisa Stone.
Lisa Stone.
Yes.
What made you and Elisa choose to partner together again? Because partnership is who you choose to partner with is so important.
We, our relationship as co-founders at BlogHer, I think all three of us had a great relationship, and it was very respectful. And we also let each other work our lane. Right. So it was funny. We all were president at first. And then our VCs, when we got our first round of funding, were like, okay, ladies, pick,
That doesn't make
pick
sense.
your lane. And we realized like Lisa needed to be the CEO. There was just certain things that we knew. And I'm a hustler. All right. I got the money. It's what I do. And I love to talk about this stuff. I can go in and I can talk it up and I can get out and we get what we need. And that's my thing. That's my jam. And, but I refuse to say that I'm head of sales. Like I never, and that's okay. So that was my thing. And Elisa, she's very operational, but she had this amazing team and she's an amazing people person. Like people just gravitate to her and they love her mentorship. And she was just she was our COO. And so we just had our natural lanes and we stuck with that. And Elisa and I just kind of stayed in touch over the years because we had so many parallel paths. Lisa ended up going the VC route and she now works at an organization called the Brain Trust. She's the founder. And she is helping to fund underrepresented founders, which are
amazing.
That's
cool,
great.
right? Like,
yes,
that was
so much needed.
kudos to her.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I can relate. So, so Elisa and I, we just happened to be in the right place at the right time where I just left a company. She just left a company. We're out to lunch and she's like, she had gone to some retreat. And she said, we had to write down things that we need to accomplish next year. And, it's going to be 10 years since we sold the company. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, I think we should work together again. I think that was my thing on my list. And she said, I don't know what it's going to be, but we just knew each other's energy and rhythm enough. And we riff and sometimes we don't agree, but we already know each other and we know how we operate. Yeah. So I said, okay, let's do it. And then we said, okay, now what?
Wow.
We just agreed that you're going to be together.
Yeah.
We're going to do something. We
What's
just
it
don't know
gonna
what it
be?
is.
Again, sounds familiar.
Yeah, right. And just over years of we knew the process and we knew like, okay, it's going to work itself out. But she's a doer. She gets it done. So I always knew that we're always going to get it somewhere to the next step. You're looking like, who's the doer here?
Yeah. Well, we're both execution, which can be a challenging thing, actually.
So there's doers, and I mean, Elisa's a visionary, but I'm a dreamer, right? I'm like, oh, what about? And she's like, wait, eyes forward.
You're a dreamer.
Yeah.
What about?
Dreamer and executor, then you're like, slow down
I'm
a little
always
bit.
thinking like a year ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you got to get there.
You have to think that way, though. You have to have somebody in the partnership to think that way.
That's right.
But also someone to bring it down to reality and what's really doable in that time frame.
But you need inspiration. You got to keep it going, or else you're going to be bored.
Right.
For sure.
And you need to have this certain mix and match, and and we have that.
Yeah. So how does it work with your? Sorry, I'm like so obsessed with this conversation right now because we're literally right in the middle of it.
It's very true.
Ourselves, but so you're still doing your fractional executive work and having optionality as a startup.
Yep.
So is Elisa also in the same position where she's still doing side or main work, side work? How does that work?
She's doing some of that, some advisory, caregiving.
Okay.
And this is the other thing that we were kind of getting very real about. I mean, the reason why I went into fractional was, yes, I thought from a business standpoint, it made more sense to work that way. And it's how I wanted to work. I had a chronically ill daughter. And I also realized like, it's time for me to work differently. It's what needs to happen. And I realized I liked it. I liked being more integrated into the family.
Yeah.
I felt a little removed when I was in it.
I can definitely relate to that. I mean, I have 2 children and teenagers, and it's like the entire time, it's like 2 parents as executives. What do you think you're doing? tons of nannies, tons of help, and then you're just feeling not as connected. And that's one of the things that I'm really, really enjoying right now is that flexibility and owning my own time on my own terms. It's like, we still want to work. We still want to be successful. We still want to get shit done. We want to do all those things, but you want to do it in a different way. I think you just hit the nail on the head. And then let alone care. I mean, caring, being a caregiver. I mean, that's just they need you more than
I did not want to outsource that.
No.
Yeah. You can't. You've always told me that too. You can outsource almost everything except you can't outsource love. You can't outsource your time.
No.
The time that you're present with your kids.
No, you can't.
Or your husband or your
And do
family
they still want to
too,
be with you?
Well, no, actually, I have a great story, Jory. So, and it's interesting because they're 17 going on 18 in about a month and then 15. But I just did a road trip with my son to Oregon, took the Airstream, and now, did he want to be with me? We carpooled. Caravan or carpooled, not carpooled, caravan.
Yeah.
And so
drove next to each other.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So, but he wanted to look at colleges, and I was like, I could still go with you. And then finally, okay, Mom. And we went to the Oregon coast, and it was super fun and exciting. We had moments together, and then we had a moment where we were going to separate, but we learned so much in those first couple of days. And then all of a sudden I was left by myself with like 28-foot Airstream and a 27-foot truck. And I'm doing this on my own. And then it was the most beautiful experience, us traveling in 2 different locations and talking the whole time. I'm doing this stop. So we were together on a journey, but in different cars. It was so yes, it's happening. And I think if I was working the way I was before, I'd be missing those moments, and we'll never get it back. Never get it back. The flexibility. I'd be working. I'm like, I can't go. Now I'm like, I go. He's like, I thought you don't have a job. And it's like, we're still working, but we have flexibility.
That's right. I got very present with sort of the irony that I was working so hard for them. And then not seeing them, right? And they're not going to live at home forever.
Nope. Yep.
Right?
Nope.
It just made sense. And I have to tell you, the best time of my day is when I have to pick them up at school. They don't drive yet. So, it's a gaggle of kids. I do the carpool, but I love it because this is the only time they will talk to me.
And
it's true.
They're
stuck in a car. They have no one else to talk to.
You only have a short period of time where you get that time.
It goes by so fast.
Right. And setting your own boundaries of when is work time, when is family time, when is personal time, but the caregiving aspect that your partner is dealing with too, like that can be a full-time job depending on what's going on. I've had stints where my new father-in-law, I just got married in April, and I have a father-in-law who was going through some health issues, and my husband doesn't have the luxury to take off work, to go to all his appointments with him, take him to his surgeries, care for him at home. And I was doing that because I had more flexibility in my situation, and it opened my eyes to the fact that this is where I need to be focusing my time. And, I'm sorry, but for my job, I'm going to have to take some time off. And luckily, I had managers that were very supportive of that at the time. But it really is a moment when it hits you.
That's work, right? That is kind of the way that work works right now. And it's not very flexible.
It's not at all. And who do you think designed that? I'm just saying. I don't know.
Well, it's my invention. I just have to, just a little aside. We just had Bridget Schulte, who wrote a book called Overwork. She is brilliant. She's at New America Foundation, and she wrote Overwhelmed. If you read that book about 10 years ago, about how we work and why the work situation in the U.S. is the way it is. And actually, the 40-hour work week was something that was developed after the war, because women were, they needed to work during the war. And so they kind of figured out, let's have it this way for now. But it wasn't always that way. They just kind of set it up because they needed people working during the war.
And
it's stuck.
But it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense anymore.
Let's go with our pitchforks and change it.
No, I don't think it ever made sense. And so I love that you're talking about the future of work. So what is the future of work in your ideal world? How are you thinking about defining it? And
Optionality, baby. There's we had someone on who she wrote The Portfolio Life. If you're familiar with the term.
Yes, that's what I call my
portfolio career,
portfolio approach,
which is it's like you have a pie and you fill it how you want. And that is what I think is the future. And I'm maybe it's wishful thinking, but so what? That's what I'm gunning for. I'm going for a portfolio life where I can have my creativity, I can have my projects that are meaningful, I can have my up and to the right, let's get this business done, and I can also pick up the kids.
Yeah. Right. And maybe it goes in phases. Maybe like a couple of years you're in portfolio world.
That's
and then
right.
maybe you're like, I'm in this 9 to 5 type of environment, because not everybody, certain careers, certain jobs, but at least having, sorry, I'm using your words, optionality.
Don't be sorry. That's the whole point of it being the name of her company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It makes such a difference. I would love to see this vision come to life for sure.
We want to normalize it.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it does, when you say normalize, it is true. When people, I guess if you were to look at certain resumes, because I, hire talent for many, many years. And then when you see these jobs that maybe they weren't there for a long period of time, or even fractional, and sometimes you're kind of like, what is that? What does that mean? It's not the norm. You start making a judgment. Your biases start kicking in. So it is not normalized at all, even the way you think about hiring talent completely. So it's like, can you look and hire talent in a different way and actually look at that as like an asset or a benefit or, new way of thinking? It's that you have to change a lot of stuff.
I went to visit with executive recruiters after BlogHer because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Let me just put feelers out. And no one knew what to do with me.
They probably had a heyday with your resume.
No, it was more like, I don't know what to do with that. And I realized there's so much that we can bring to the table with our varied experiences. Why do we have to have it one way?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
I love your approach. I think
know.
Yes. Future of work. Here we come.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how it should be.
I love it.
For sure.
Thank you, Jory. So we're coming to an end here, and it's been so fabulous. And so one of the questions that we like to ask is, who would you like to uplift in this moment, or pay it forward and call out some amazing women?
I have my girls. So there's a few from different eras. Can I name like 3 quickly?
Every guest has a list.
Oh my
so
God.
Name them all.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, the first one is a woman named Gina Garubo. And Gina was our first head of revenue at BlogHer. And she is a longtime ad salesperson. She now is the CEO of National Public Media. So, she's had a career.
Yeah.
And we hired her and she came on. She was the fractional that we had. She was
You were already doing it back then.
but we didn't call it that. That's the thing. And we brought her on. And the thing that I just so wanted to emulate about her is that she's excited about it. She won't do it unless she's excited. And when she's excited, anyone is on board. She just would get so into it. And I had lunch with her or dinner with her the other day. Elisa and I met with her, and she was so excited about optionality. And we were kind of having an off day. And then after we met with her, we're like, oh my God,
Re-energized.
we're brilliant. Like this is we're on the right path. Just someone who believes in what you can do and has just made that a career of like just lifting people up and getting them excited and making it happen. Like that's Gina. The other person would be Mona Sabet. And Mona co-founded an organization called High Power. I'm wondering if you've heard of it. No. So it's a women's organization. And the idea was, hey, there's a bunch of women in tech. We all kind of have had our experiences. We haven't even really talked about, like I did work at Amazon. I've had my experiences in big companies as a woman in tech. And there are frustrations. And Mona was the one who figured out like, hey, we're all really smart here. If we all got together and helped each other figure out what we need to get out of this, not just how to get the next promotion, but what do we want to be known for in this world? And I joined High Power. I was referred in and I joined and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to get out of this. But for a year, I just met with other women who were trying to figure out, what do I want for my legacy? And I'm still connected with the organization, and she's become a good friend. And I just think that how she has run this and everyone, I mean, I can ask for anything of this group and I get it. Wow. Legal help,
I'm gonna go check that out.
I want to go. Yes. Oh my God, you'd be amazing. You guys you would love it. You would love it. But she's just a galvanizer. And I think we all learned that, we don't have to go through this on our own. We can actually do this together and help each other out. And I mean, I had that ethos at BlogHer, but now seeing this play out with other women in their careers was just really amazing. And then the last one is Marie Gill, who is a woman I recently worked with. She's been an executive for many years. Starbucks was one of her companies that she really helped to grow over time. And she just taught me a lot about wellness. We were in a project together. It was a leadership platform for CHROs of global companies. And we were kind of planning it together, and it's still happening. We're still kind of in our well, what do we want to be when we grow up phase? But she is passionate about well-being to the point where she has structured projects around research and how does this play out in the workplace. And she has a community she's developed, and she talks about this all the time and just walks her talk. Just someone who I just respect and admire.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Well, we'll have to bring them on.
Yeah,
And if
exactly.
you have more people,
and I was gonna
exactly.
say,
Yes. We need all the help. We all need to work together in the community and lift each other up and get recommendations. Our networks are so big, and then it's a matter of just paying it forward and scaling it. And then people, we all know people.
Yeah.
So
I know
Just this conversation that makes me feel like we're doing the right thing.
It
we're
feels right.
approaching life the way that makes sense for us, and that means we're doing it the right way. So thank you for encouraging that and confirming that for us today.
It is so amazing, and it's valuable, and it's we needed to hear this affirmation.
Yeah. Yes.
This is a
You're
good
onto something.
We're on
Yes.
something. We don't know what, but we'll figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah. So
And
thank
that's
you.
okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Jory.
All right. Thank
That's a
you,
wrap.
everyone. That's a wrap.
All right. We cannot end without having the biggest gratitude to thank those that are behind the scenes. Alex Sully, our creative director and producer. Becky Davis, our talented director of photography. Kristen West, our brilliant brand and design expert. And of course, thanks to all of you for making our vision of Humanize Her come to life.